So I'm Richard Baum. I'm going to be your guide today to cybersecurity excellence. Hopefully, I can teach you a couple of quick things, and if there are certain things that are out there that maybe you didn't know, maybe I can give you a couple. Not going to go into too depth. I've got a topic today I want to talk about. I was browsing the news last night and I ran across an article, and of course it's in Forbes magazine, so it's obviously a magazine that is important to a lot of people, but the article was super important because it's an informational article from the FBI. New FBI warning: disable local admin accounts as attacks continue. Now, based on the title of the article, you'd sit here and go, oh, they want me to disable my admin accounts on my computer, but how can I do that? Because I need to be able to install programs and they're not really saying disable all local admin accounts, but there are a number of situations where maybe users have more access than they need. So this article obviously goes into depth about hackers are using many methods to steal our data, especially from AI chatbots. So they're finding ways to do two-factor authentication bypass attacks. And very much this is a warning going out from the FBI saying, hey guys, you need to start doing mitigating tactics to stop this from being a thing. So I like this article. I highly recommend it. I will post this site in the chat if you want to review it yourself and read it. But this is becoming a real big issue. People are able to break into one account, and because that account has admin access, they can pull the keys to the kingdom and get at whatever they want. Don't let this be you. That is another thing that I want to talk about is the principle of least privilege. This is one of the ways you can help avert this situation and become more protected in your environment and your company. So by using the principle of least privilege. Now, the FBI does a nice job of giving us a little article here, basically telling us only allow designated administrator accounts to be used for administrative purposes. So how do we employ this? Well, if, say, you have someone who uses a computer, don't share your account with them if you are the administrator. They have no reason to have that kind of access or rights. If you have someone who just checks email or just works in a certain program every day, they don't need access. But it gets harder than that. Say you're the CEO of your company. You feel like you should have access to everything. And that's great. You should. You should be able to ask for access to anything within your company and get results. But you also become your company's biggest weakness. You will become a spear phishing attack vector for people out there who are looking to get an in on your company because they know you're high up. If they can breach you, they've got everything they need. So let's talk a little bit about this. Just kind of talk a little bit about ways we can deal with least privilege. Principle of least privilege. We have a definition here. It's essentially user systems and applications should be granted the minimum level of access or privileges required to do their tasks. And by limiting this access, this principle helps reduce the risk of accidental or intentional misuse of systems, data, and resources, which we'll get to later. So in practice, what this means, and as you see on the slide, users and programs should only have the permissions necessary for their job functions. So how this essentially would look is, say you have an IT administrator. They should be the only ones that have rights to install things on your computers. Okay? Wow, that could cause all sorts of problems, couldn't it? Yes and no. Proper planning prevents poor performance. 2, users should not be given administrative privileges unless absolutely necessary. there are times that sometimes a user does need administrative privileges. There are ways to give a user temporary administrative privileges, but again, it requires somebody to come alongside you and be there when those users need that. And permissions should be time limited, and access should be revoked when it's no longer needed. And that's kind of a nice follow-up to number 2 there. Implementing least privilege helps to minimize potential damage from security breaches, accidental errors, malicious activity, and if something does happen, the scope of access is restricted, which means what the attacker can get may not be the whole thing that they were after, but maybe just one little piece by the time you catch them. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of least privilege. And to be fair, because obviously I'm a proponent of least privilege policies, there are some drawbacks. I want to go through them with you so you understand what we're talking about. So benefits of the principle of least privilege is you will improve your security. If you do it and do it right, you can reduce your risk of cybersecurity breaches. Not even cybersecurity breaches. You could implement this in physical access. You could implement this in document access. You could implement this in policies of who's allowed to talk to who internally or externally in your company. And by doing this, you can protect a lot of your sensitive data and system functions from breach, compromise, or even accidental outages. If you think about it like that. If you don't have rights to the admin window, you can't install that one program that broke everything. So let's talk about minimizing malware spread. It prevents malware or ransomware from getting system-wide control. Can't install if it doesn't have admin rights. Reduces insider threats. Well, this is the one I want to get on to. You've all had that thought of what if one of my employees goes rogue? What if they open the door to an outsider? If they can't install the software the outsider used to get in, they can't get to it. If they don't have admin privileges to get to the sensitive data, the outsider's not going to be able to have them exfiltrate that data. It reduces the damage that could be done by just any employee in your company to just their area of expertise. Regulatory compliance. This is a big deal, and we're seeing this more and more nowadays, guys. You are going to be regulated. You are going to have these compliance issues. The more that the government is getting involved and insurance is requiring these standards to be met to have cybersecurity insurance, you're going to find this to be an issue. So you might want to look at seeing how can I implement this in my environment. Better system stability. This is what I talked about earlier. If somebody accidentally messes something up, if they didn't have access to it to begin with, they wouldn't mess it up. It's like you have someone who shouldn't be in the server room and they accidentally turn around and pull the plug out of the wall. Well, that's a pretty unfortunate situation to be in, but if they didn't have access to that room to begin with, not a problem. Same thing goes for your file access, install access, least privilege. So you'll, of course, have improved auditing and monitoring by nature. If you're doing least privilege, you should know who has access to what. And it's a lot easier to track who did the thing if you know who has access to what. And it reduces your attack surface. If everybody in the company has access to all the files, everybody in the company has access to exfiltrate data or to accidentally let someone in if they have admin privileges. If only a couple people have access to it, it's a lot easier to train and police those few people. So let's talk about the drawbacks. Again, I'm a big proponent, but the drawbacks need to be talked about. It causes increased admin overhead. Least privilege is hard. You as a leader have to make decisions of who can see what and when they're going to be allowed exceptions to that. And you have to stand up and make sure your policies are being well followed. And if your policies aren't understood or aren't being followed, you're increasing your attack vector. User frustration and productivity impact. This is the biggest drawback and fear. that people have about implementing this policy. User frustration, and nobody likes having to ask somebody else to come in and put in the password. Why can't I just do it myself? I'm smart. I'm an intelligent employee. I should be able to know and vet if this is safe or not. But the truth of the matter is, most of the time, even though we feel like we should be able to do that, we don't. We aren't. We as employees don't in the moment think about the danger 10 steps ahead. And that's where it's nice to have an IT provider, cybersecurity experts to come in next to you and say, it's okay, let me vet this for you. It adds time, and I know that it reduces productivity, but remember me saying earlier, proper planning prevents poor performance? If you coordinate well with your IT team, by the time you need the thing, they can be ready and schedule an appointment with you to make it happen with you, or give you those rights during that time if that's within your policy structure. Complexity and implementation. Yes, it's complex. It's hard to keep track of where those files are stored and who has access to what, and to make sure that every time you separate an employee, their access is cut. Every time you add a new employee, they get the appropriate accesses. It's hard, but this can take your business to the next level if you do this, so you're less vulnerable to attack. Yes, there's potential for misconfiguration of this. Joe in accounting, all of a sudden, he's sitting here going, I should have access to that, but I don't have access to that. Somebody messed up when they onboarded him. You may have to put in a request if you find something's missing, but it's still better to put in that request, get him fixed, than to have a situation where you don't know who has access to your data. Privilege escalation workarounds. Now, users may be smart. We've all got that techie user, right? We've got that endpoint user, that person on our team that just knows how to do things that nobody else does. There are always usually ways to find a way to bypass the restrictions put in your company, especially if you don't have an IT partner like VanderNet putting the tools in place that make it so that they can't do it without administrative access. These things are possible. People can share credentials, they can request a temporary permission, but then they do something else that's excessive while they have it. These are the things that could be a problem. And a lot of times your users are going to feel that this policy is too restrictive, but you as management can help them understand the danger. And if you can help them understand the danger, they will work within the policy. The other thing is frequent permission requests. This is not something that you want to manage yourself. Bring in IT, because employees are often going to need elevated access for temporary times. VanderNet has tools, we have resources that we have vetted and spent money on to have in our arsenal so that we can help you guys to work through this and help your employees work through this without having to say, hey boss, I need a password again. And then, of course, I just want to conclude with this particular document by saying, yes, it requires careful planning and balance to ensure it doesn't hinder you, but with significant planning, you can properly implement this and use it to take you to the next level in compliance, the next level in all of your methodology. You could even build a culture of security that maybe you don't have yet. I highly recommend this policy, and I highly recommend, if you haven't visited a security provider that can help you implement this and policies like it that are going to protect your business, give us a call, reach out to us. Tell you what, I'll give you an email address, hello@rethinksecure.com. Reach out to VanderNet and we would love to schedule a call with you. Thank you all for joining me today, and I thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Have a great day and stay safe out there.